I'll call this meeting of the City Council to order and start with a roll call, please. Mayor White. Here. Deputy Mayor Feller. Here. Councilmember Kine. Here. Councilmember Rodriguez. Here. Councilmember Sanchez. Mr. Mullen. Thank you, Council. We'll be meeting in closed session to discuss items 2 and 3. There's no meeting on item 1. Item 2, conference with Rural Property Negotiator involving 2 parcels of land, 3.5 acres located at 3131 Oceanside Boulevard and 14.19 acres of land located at 4991 Macario Drive. Negotiating parties are City of Oceanside and the Oceanside Unified School District. Under negotiations are price and terms for the potential acquisition of real property. Item 3, conference with legal counsel on existing litigation in the matter of Bonnie Cummins versus Geraldine Show. The case number is referenced on page 2 of the agenda. Do we have speakers? No speakers. Adjourn the closed session. We'll call this meeting of the Oceanside City Council to order and start with a roll call, please. Mayor White. Here. Deputy Mayor Feller. Here. Councilmember Kine. Here. Councilmember Rodriguez. Here. Councilmember Sanchez. Here. And if you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. If I could invite Emerald from the Chamber to come down with our business spotlight. Remember?
On behalf of the Oceanside Chamber, I'd like to call up Nicole Douglas of Enyo, California, to be recognized as our member of the quarter. Nicole's background is in communications. She received her BA from Stanford University. She's been living in Oceanside with her husband for about 7 years and recently celebrated 1 year of being in business with Enyo. Nicole's business focuses on eco-friendly, waste-free cleaning products for your home and business. Nicole is an active member of the Oceanside Chamber and has partnered with us in our efforts to educate local businesses on best sustainability practices with the city's Green Oceanside program. In addition to being a proud member of the Oceanside Chamber and the Green Oceanside Business Network, Nicole is also a member of the National Association of Female Entrepreneurs, the North County Women in Networking Group, and she also serves on the leadership committee of the GOGs. Thank you for your support and dedication to serving our community. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you very much for this award and recognition. I couldn't dream of a better city to be the home of my business, Enyo, which is a system of chemical-free, waste-free cleaning products for homes and small businesses. Oceanside has been such a leader in green initiatives and sustainable practices. I'm proud to be both a resident and business owner in a city that shares the same values, both professionally and personally, that I do when it comes to protecting your health and protecting our environment. Being a small business owner can definitely be daunting at times, and I am extremely grateful for the support, learning opportunities, and growth opportunities provided by the Oceanside Chamber. I'm excited to continue growing my business in this growing city and to share Enyo and the positive impact it has on our community. Thank you, Chamber, and thank you, Oceanside.
Where is your business located?
In my home.
At this time, if I could have Linda from the fire department and our Red Cross representatives to please come forward.
Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. And like Mayor Wise said, I'm Linda McLaughlin with the Oceanside Fire Department. I'm in public education for the department. And one of my jobs is to make sure that your home and the home of all of our residents in Oceanside is safe. So in doing that, we know we have some older homes in Oceanside that were built before the invention of smoke alarms. We also know that we have a lot of people that have never replaced their smoke alarms. And we have those that have never changed their batteries. And so with that, we've got Melissa Altman from the American Red Cross, who's going to let you all know about a wonderful opportunity and project that we're working on for April 18th. So please put that date on your calendar, because it's going to be an amazing day that day. So let's live up to. Hi, thank you for having me. I have a short presentation, if you will, just to go over a little bit about the program. So. All right. Again, thank you for having me today. I'm the Regional Preparedness Manager, and I'm in the Disaster Department. So one of the things that we respond to nearly every day is home fires. They're the biggest disaster threat facing Americans, killing about 2,500 people every single year. It's kind of a disaster that never gets mentioned in the news, but it's happening all around us. So the Red Cross responds to nearly 64,000 disasters every year, and the vast majority are home fires. So we found that a working smoke alarm cut the risk of dying in half. By half. A simple alarm in everyone's home. That's all we need. So the Red Cross wanted to do something about it. And a few years back, we decided to start our Sound the Alarm program. Now this is a national signature 2-week event. Our goal in those 2 weeks is to install 100,000 free smoke alarms in 40,000 homes with the help of 27,000 volunteers across the nation. Our teams go door to door in the community. We not only install these free alarms, we're actually educating as we go. We educate in home fire safety, in wildfire safety, and we develop a escape route for every home that we enter. So far in national progress, we have 715 lives saved through this program. 5 are local here in San Diego County. We've installed over 2 million smoke alarms in 864,000 homes, and we're always available to install. So just because it's during those 2 weeks, we actually offer year-round these installations. Now, what does that mean to you? Well, last year, our national event was in Chula Vista. We had 375 volunteers install 965 alarms in one day. We made 415 homes safer, and we did it with a huge MTS bus and rented vehicles. On the right up on the screen, you can actually see that's the area we covered. So a huge area going door to door. And there's a picture of all of our some of our volunteers. These were some of our supporters last year. We had the mayor, Supervisor Cox, and the fire chief Gearing, as well as a lot of other organizations, military groups, community groups. It was a really big success, and it really brought the community together. But this year, we decided to pick Oceanside as our national Sound the Alarm event for the San Diego County. It is Saturday on April 18th. We're requiring volunteers get there at 8 a.m. and it goes until 1 p.m. We are partnering with the Oceanside Fire Department. Linda has been a big supporter of our program year-round, so it's been great to have her on our team. We need 200 plus volunteers to make our goal of 700 plus alarms happen in that one day. So what we're doing is doing a canvassing event on April 11th where we're going to tell them that we're going to be there in a week. We'll sign people up for appointments. We also will offer follow-up appointments for any residents that are not available that day or that missed us. These are the mobile home parks that have been chosen, and all of them have agreed to have us go door to door. As you can see, we're going to over 1,400 units, and again, it's offering these free alarms and education everywhere we go. We just want to make sure these homes are safe. Now, this is where I ask for help. So, from you, what we need is join us. I would love to have any and all, anyone in Oceanside join us because it's a really fun event. Free breakfast and lunch for everyone. But we're always looking for our volunteers, and you don't need to know how to install alarm. Just join us in the education as well as the, in the process of the volunteers. So we can use anyone's help. If you have volunteers in your area that would like to join us, we're taking everyone and all. We'll find a place for everyone that joins us. And we also need transportation. So if there's any organizations that have a bus or a large van that can transport people, again, we'll have over 200 volunteers, so we're going to need some transportation for those volunteers. We're also looking for food providers. If there's anyone in the community that would be willing to donate part or all of a breakfast or lunch, we would love those donations. Or if you want, we can donate to soundthealarm.org. It's a great program that has made a lot of people safer here in San Diego County. Last fiscal year, we installed over 10,000 smoke alarms for the year. So we're making huge numbers and making people safer. That is it for me. And if you have any questions, I'll take them. Thanks. Anybody have any questions? Okay, looking forward to seeing some of you out there. Oh, we do have a question. Go ahead. Absolutely, yes. So that's on April 11th. April 11th is when we're canvassing. So you can join us for that event. Otherwise, you can come to our April 18th install event. And again, usually it's just a little bit of walking, but we go door to door, we educate. Someone's the documenter, and then another person's an installer. It's a fun day, and you're outside, you're in the community, and it's great. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Mullen? Thank you. I'll give the closed session report. There was no closed session on item 1 of the agenda. Item 2, conference with real estate negotiator involving 2 parcels of land, 3.5 acres located at 3131 Oceanside Boulevard and 14.19 acres located at 4991 Macario Drive. Negotiating parties, City of Oceanside and the Oceanside Unified School District. Under negotiations are pricing terms for the potential acquisition of property. There's no reportable action under the Brown Act to report on item 2. Item 3 is a conference with legal counsel on existing litigation in the matter of Bonnie Cummins versus Geraldine Shaw in the City of Oceanside. There's no action on that item to report under the Brown Act either. Thank you. With that, we'll go to our consent calendar, which are items 5 through 11. Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. Move approval. I'd like to pull item number 7, move approval for balance.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Five oh. Go to item 7. Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. The item is entitled Approval of Reimbursement Agreement with Zephyr Oceanside LLC in the amount of $393,071 for the encapsulation of contaminated soil at the corner of State Route 76 and Fusat Road. Approval of budget appropriation amount of $393,071 from the Water Fixed Asset Replacement Unrestricted Fund Balance account to fund the project, and authorization for the city manager to execute the agreement. And what I wanted to bring forward were 3 questions, general questions that have been asked of me from the public. I have had a chance to get some responses from staff, but I wanted to bring out these questions so that people who are asking them will get the responses from you directly, okay? So the concerns were that first, that since this is a different project, which was approved in 2008. Shouldn't this be considered at the time of current project approval hearings? Second question is, there is a supplemental EIR with scoping meeting for the new project moving forward. So shouldn't this be considered as part of that process and hearings regarding approval of a new project? And finally, number 3, hopefully you've seen these questions, right? Number 3, wasn't this a condition of the first project, and therefore shouldn't the developer be paying for these costs?
Thank you, Councilmember Sanchez, Honorable Mayor, City Council, Lindsay Leahy, Principal Water Engineer with the Water Utilities Department. Happy to answer these questions for you. The first question regarding this being a different project, when this came forward early 2019, this was under the original Pavilions EIR and project that was approved previously in entitlement. So at the time when they applied for their grading permit, we were requiring to follow that original EIR document and MMRP, the mitigation.
Could you speak in the mic a little more?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program, which was originally approved back in 2008. So upon receiving that grading permit application, Water Utilities staff reviewed the application and looked further into the project. And because we don't have staff here that was originally here back in 2007, 2008 timeframe, I can't speculate why this wasn't originally addressed back then. But because we are planning and investing so much money into the use of that aquifer, we wanted to take additional measures above what was recommended in the original mitigation monitoring and reporting program, which originally just required the burial of the contaminated soils. So the water utility staff requested that an additional membrane be placed around the soil so that it was completely separated from the soil around it.
So these are steps that are being required now because of concerns about public safety and the potential contamination of water, of drinking water and
correct
tap water.
Yes, this was steps that water utilities staff wanted to go above and beyond to ensure the public health and safety and the health of that aquifer as well, because it is such a vital source to the city. Any other questions on number 1?
Right. So if it had been required at the beginning in say 2008, if somebody there had a crystal ball and all these things were going to be happening in terms of reclaiming our water, would the developer have been required to pay for these? This is on their property.
If we had a crystal ball at that time, yes, and it was discussed and changed in that environmental impact report and mitigated monitoring reporting program, yes. What this item is covering, that $390-some thousand, is actually the difference in cost from what their original scope of work to bury the soil was to actually add that membrane. So it's just the delta between the two costs of the two mitigation items.
I understand staff did some negotiations with respect to the costs, and I understand that the work has already been done.
Correct.
Was it considered an emergency, or because usually things get approved before the work is done?
So the developer took the risk that council would not approve the reimbursement agreement here tonight and move forward with it in order to not impede on the progress of their project. We had a general understanding of the scope. We agreed on the costs, as well as resubmitted the mitigation plan to the Department of Environmental Health, who originally approved the mitigation measure from the original 2008 MMRP. So we resubmitted the new scope to the Department of Environmental Health to have them take a look at what we were asking and make sure that they were in concurrence with staff and agreed to approve that mitigation measure.
And since 2008, there were some additional plans made for drilling, right, for water?
We are always looking at ways to expand our production out of the aquifer, yes, but they are not necessarily related or hand in hand.
Okay. And as to the cost, I understand that initially they were going to be asking, or they were asking for over, something more than this, like maybe $1 million. So the negotiations did bring it down
We originally were looking at the cost of actually removing the soil physically from the site and what that would cost, and it was in the couple $1 million range. This was a cost-effective and reassuring measure, and staff all met together, including our city engineer and our geotech experts, to make sure that this was a good solution for the city as well as the Water Utilities Department.
Thank you, and I really appreciate that explanation because the way, when I first read the report, it sounded like we were, giving money to a developer for their project, in other words, supplementing their project. So your explanations really helped in explaining that the conditions changed and we needed this for basically public safety purposes, and that you negotiated as low as you could go. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Move approval. Sorry.
Yeah, I read the report and the staff report, and everything you just said was made clear within that report, so I'd like to move on a second of Esther Sanchez's motion. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion approved by vote. We'll go to item 12, which is approval of the city's updated 2020 legislative platform. We'll start with Terry.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. I'm Terry Gorman-Brown, Management Analyst in the City Manager's Office, and this item is an update to the legislative platform. The platform assists staff in identifying and advancing the city's legislative priorities when communicating with our state and federal legislators. These principles provide parameters when rapidly responding to legislative issues which may impact Oceanside. Pursuant to council policy, the council shall occasionally review and update the city's legislative platform. As stated, the platform guides staff's advocacy efforts on state and federal proposals that support the well-being of the city and its citizens. The platform revises and reorganizes older guidelines with input received from the city manager, department directors, and a review of legislative priorities from our partners like the League of California Cities. The legislative platform is grouped into 8 priority areas. Public safety will seek funding to help increase emergency preparedness, promote the safety of Oceanside residents, and strengthen the city's cybersecurity defenses, housing, and quality of life. We'll advocate for federal and state funding and tools to provide affordable housing opportunities, support the growing needs of senior services, and seek aid for people experiencing homelessness. Economic development. We will support legislation that helps develop a skilled workforce in Oceanside, aids us in supporting our businesses, and aims to grow the local economy. Fiscal stability. We will advocate for legislation that ensures the financial health of the city and protects local governments. Transportation and infrastructure. We will support legislation which provides state and federal funding for roads and the development of programs and funding to expand investment in Oceanside's infrastructure. Smart and sustainable city. We will support funding opportunities that maximize sustainability initiatives and funding to implement technologies that improve the efficiency of city services. Coastal protection and enhancement. We'll advocate for legislation which aids in beach sand retention and replenishment, and will continue to oppose offshore oil drilling along our coastline. And finally, local control. The city strongly promotes local control and will support or oppose legislation based on whether it impacts local control over city revenues, land use, community development, or other city policies. So the recommendation is that you approve the revised legislative platform. Thank you.
Do we have any speakers? We have 6 speakers. Our first speaker is Diane Allen, to be followed by Roger Davenport, to be followed by Cindy Davenport. And as I call your name, or as you see it up there, please make your way down to the kiosk We have 2 kiosks, and you have 3 minutes to speak, and please speak directly into the microphone. Feel free to move it around. All right, and with that, Diane Allen.
Yes, good evening. My name is Diane Allen, and I live in District Number 3. We love Oceanside tremendously. We raised our children here down by the drive-ins, going every weekend. They played at Buddy Dodd Park and the beach playground. It was before the 76 became a separate highway. And they went to San Luis Rey School. We always drove past the downtown area back then to get to the beach. And it's really nice to enjoy the downtown area now. There's been a lot of improvements, and I'm very grateful for all of them. Last year, I helped promote and support the Climate Action Plan. Everyone that I talked to was excited when it passed last May. I recently looked to see where you are with it, and I understand there's an update next week, a workshop that we're looking forward to. But if it's not in these plans and this legislative platform, I don't see how it's going to get done. So I'm here to support the Climate Action Plan getting implemented and feel that including those plans in the legislative platform are imperative. Thank you.
Is this one live over here? I don't see the timer. Okay. Hi, Mr. Mayor, council members, staff. My name is Roger Davenport, and I live at 541 Crouch Street. And I'm also co-chair of the Sierra Club's Oceanside team, and I'm here today speaking on behalf of the over 600 Sierra Club members who live in our city. The fact is that we're rapidly approaching a climate crisis, but the proposed legislative platform does not reflect the urgency of action needed on climate issues. Although a call for increased renewable energy production is included, we feel much more is needed. Responding to the challenges of climate change and weaning ourselves from fossil fuels will require significant efforts beginning now and extending in the long term. We believe the City of Oceanside should be actively pushing our state and national governments to prioritize and strongly support our local efforts to address these issues. And for example, funding is needed to implement transportation systems that avoid greenhouse gas production and which reduce road expansion and vehicle miles traveled. We also need incentives to retrofit existing buildings and public infrastructure to make them more efficient and reduce their carbon footprints. New buildings need to be built so they do not depend on fossil fuel use. Coastal protection needs to include funding to effectively deal with sea level rise and the increasing intensity of storms that we're already experiencing in order to provide long-term stability for our waterfront facilities. And increasing use of renewable energy sources is essential, and we need to move quickly to electric power systems that do not rely on fossil fuels or nuclear power. Community choice energy programs need to be strongly supported and quickly implemented. We're all in this together, and Oceanside's going to need lots of support as we address these critical issues. We therefore urge the City Council to delay adoption of this item and direct that the legislative platform be modified to include climate issues and prioritize climate action. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. I'm Cindy Davenport, resident since 2008. And I think it could be a good idea to defer approval of this until more public input could be received and accounted for. For example, by section 1 under public safety, I think it would be a good idea for the city to look for these legislative funding sources that could support
and encourage local autonomy and resiliency following disasters. For example, a microgrid infrastructure could be created that would operate autonomously with local renewable electricity production and storage to provide electricity following a disaster. Solar energy would probably be the easiest thing to do, and that would be something very helpful during emergencies. Also under 6, smart and sustainable city. I think it's a good idea to support incentives that reduce or eliminate natural gas usage and encourage all electric buildings. For example, heat pump water heaters are so efficient, they should be encouraged to be installed. And we should be able to get some funding to do those conversions and also require them in new construction. And then under 8, local control, I think actually this is another area where community choice energy would work very well, controlling our rates. We can lower our rates for everyone as well as have a revenue for the city so that we can work on these important climate action plan items. And for example, the aforementioned microgrid infrastructure to protect us during disasters, that'd be a great project in conjunction with community choice energy. So let's not overlook getting some legislative support for these important issues in our climate action plan. Thank you.
Nygaard, to be followed by Ellen Bartlett, to be followed by Jimmy Knott.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Diane Nygaard. I'm here tonight representing Preserve Calavera. We're a conservation organization. Our mission is to preserve, protect, and enhance the natural resources of coastal North County. About 10 years ago, we realized that all of our conservation work would be meaningless if we didn't address climate change. And now scientists are predicting that over half the species on Earth will be at risk of extinction in our lifetimes. The time to act on climate is now. We need to hear the voices of the children around this world who say they want us to act now so that they can have a real future. This proposed legislative agenda is an opportunity for the call for the kind of action that really is needed. Addressing climate change is a global issue, but we all have a part to play. Please make responding to climate change a key part of our Oceanside legislative agenda, not just an afterthought. Ask the state to do their share with actions to improve fuel economy standards and green building codes and to provide the kind of funding and technical assistance that we need to do our share. We're a coastal city, and doing more to reduce greenhouse gases will help protect our coast and the coast economy that is so important to all of us. We urge you to make climate a priority in this legislative program and to ask the state to do more to help us. Let us hear the voices of those children and make responding to climate change a real priority in Oceanside. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ellen Bartlett. I'm a retired high school science teacher from Oceanside High and a very long-time resident. I wanted to talk to you tonight. First of all, I'd like to set a picture up for you. I wanted to talk to you tonight because I believe the City of Oceanside 2020 legislative platform is suffering from the sin of omission. And it is you, the council, that is responsible for this sin of omission. If you pass the platform as is, you, as the council, are failing to act on the climate crisis, which you are able to do and which you ought to do, but you have intentionally ignored. You have omitted in this platform any support for efforts to reverse the climate changing effects caused by human activity, including transportation, energy, and waste management.
You have omitted the opportunity to support or seek funding for legislation that incentivizes carbon sequestration. You have omitted the opportunity to support community choice energy legislation. CCE will provide greener energy at lower prices and provide funds for renewable energy development. Please do the right thing and add environmental protections to your legislative platform before it is approved. The 2020 platform must reflect the urgency of the climate crisis that we have in 2020. The platform that you currently have does not address that. I could have probably seen the same platform back in 1990, and this is not what we want for our families. And this is what we're getting right now. Thank you.
Mayor, council members, Jimmy Knott, 127 Sherry Lane. This proposal before you is different from the way things have been presented in the past. And it needs more study. In the past, we've had valid public surveys. We've also had presentations of both state and federal legislation that will be taken up by the appropriate bodies. There was not mention of any of those policies or legislative agendas. Also, I do not see anything for preparation for the sea level rise. I live near the Lomata Creek, as many of you know, especially you, Mayor Weiss. You and I have talked there many a time. And with the potential of sea level rise, if you looked at the latest satellite pictures from the Antarctica, with 1/3 approximately melted or melting currently, we're not looking at protection of those homes and businesses that are going to be inundated during heavy sea events and rain events. Nor was the sand replenishment with the littoral flow considered, with the potential of maybe mitigating it, like sinking of mothballed ships to make reefs, and then taking from that, replenishing the sand on our shoreline. Or looking at the sandbars off the coast. That could easily be done, but nobody has looked into for a series of years, which I've talked to Councilmember Feller, Deputy Mayor Feller, in the years past. He doesn't want us to bring it up because he knows it's a hot topic and you'll take your hands away from the burner right off. But we need to look into other options. It doesn't necessarily have to be what you agree with, but it's something that you should look at. So those are a few different things that need to be considered and for you to take into consideration. And I would urge you to table this until those items are brought back. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for the public comments. Okay, thank you very much. I actually really appreciate the comments that were made because I think it would have been a better process to have done a workshop on this so we can get more people involved in this when we're talking about legislation, and obviously we're in the process of updating our general plan, so I imagine we'll have a need to update this again in a very short period of time. But I also agree that there are certain things that should have been included at least at this point, and that includes the climate action plan as a separate item. I tried to figure out where in this so that we could do that, along with other things, like, for example, above and beyond climate action plan, under public safety, on the first item it says support legislation which would strengthen local law enforcement, provide for enhanced public safety, and I would have loved to have seen including community policing and improving community police relations, because that is something that has been something that we're proud that we changed over to community policing, but we're constantly needing more funding to to improve our program. Also, under responses to disasters and terrorism, it says support legislation that increases funding to respond to and recover from natural disasters and terrorism. I'd suggest that we right after that, including comprehensive evacuation procedures for earthquakes, tsunami, and wildfires. These are things that we were threatened with not too long ago, and I have been, especially recently, I was asked, when are we going to talk about our evacuation procedures as a community so that we know what to do, especially neighborhoods in the east. Then seek funding for gang prevention, intervention, and enforcement. What we pride ourselves in doing is being more proactive, so we're not assuming every kid is a gang member in a certain, if they live in a certain neighborhood. So I would have liked for us to have written it as seek funding for at-risk youth, after-school programs, and gang prevention, intervention, and enforcement. With respect to housing and quality of life, I would like to add that we support legislation that would provide support for individuals suffering from mental health issues, housing for individuals suffering from mental health issues. Because in talking with the county and trying to figure out what we're going to do with the homeless, there's a definite need for providing housing and placement for our mentally ill, and that is something that we're going to have to do. I mean, actually go forward on if we're really truly going to be serious about addressing all our homeless issues. And then also under housing and quality of life, this is where I would have suggested that we talk about climate change. This is, I suggest that we put in there support legislation and funding that will assist cities in achieving zero waste, address climate change, including adoption of CCE. Under economic development, I think we really have to address a glaring issue for us in that we have the lowest jobs to residence ratio in the county. So here I would say support measures that would amplify the city's efforts to retain and promote the success of local businesses and increase the number of jobs in Oceanside, I would put comma, then transitioning into a green economy with smaller carbon footprints, and with respect to those jobs, increased number of businesses and livable wage jobs. With respect to economic development, under education, some of the education items, I would include language that talks about adding support the development of accelerated learning programs and new four-year college programs. There's a trend that's going on that some of the community colleges are actually doing four-year programs. And I would love for Maricosta to be that, so that it is cost less to be able to have some of our kids get their BA and get into a job, a well-paying job. Under transportation and infrastructure, I would add the words under the first item, I would say support legislation that provides for effective and efficient public transportation alternatives. While we have, north and south and one east and west, we don't have a really good public transportation program in Oceanside. If you live out east, you can't grab a bus to get anywhere around Oceanside. Along with that, we don't have any shuttles that, for our east-west Sprinter. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go to the hospital. It doesn't go to the courthouse or the mall or even the Performing Arts Center. So this is how we're going to finally get our carbon footprint smaller. And with respect, again, to the transportation infrastructure, development of support legislation and funding that would lead to the development of Class A bicycle lanes throughout Oceanside, as well as safe routes to school. I mean, that's something that is really topical at this point. And then number 7, where we talk about coastal protection and enhancement, I would really like to add coastal and habitat protection and enhancement. And a separate bullet point that speaks to our habitat, support legislation and funding to support our sub-area habitat conservation plan. This is something that is going to be subsumed into our update to the general plan. At least that's what staff suggested that we were going to be doing. And once upon a time, the state actually provided funding to do land acquisitions to be able to adopt a habitat sub-area plan. So, and I guess finally, I would reiterate that we do need to emphasize a climate action plan and put it as the speakers have said up front. And if we can, I would like to continue this item so that we can really have a good discussion on the dais, but also with the public. This is a legislative platform update. This is something that is supposed to be done as a state with input from the City Council, and it should be with the public. So those are my comments. There's a lot that we can be doing here in terms of seeking funding from the state and from the federal as well as the county. Thank you.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you for all the comments from members of the public. This is in reference to Council Policy 100-16, which gives guidelines to city staff on advocating for or against specific bills that come across our state and federal government, and how we should view those bills either in opposition or support, and it'll be signed by the mayor. This is not a laundry list. This is not a wish list. This is purely advocacy that our city can represent an opinion on when it comes to climate change, when it comes to the coastal area, when it comes to homelessness, when it comes to local control. This is not a wish list. This is not a let's give staff 100 things that they can go after. This is purely just guidance so that they know what to look for and how to respond when it comes across their desk and their red flag. I personally think that it's a bit winded. I think there's a lot here, but I think that it's appropriate. They do clearly touch on advocating for our climate action plan. I mean, I'm sure they can list 100 more things on that, but in the end, if there's something involving climate action and the state's moving on something that's going to affect us here in Oceanside, city staff is going to move on making it clear our position in supporting our climate action plan. So I think staff did a great job. I support it. A big thing for me that I would just like to reiterate is on page 1 of 5, advocate for federal completion of the San Luis Rey River project to reduce flood risks to the city of Oceanside. What's tied to this is hundreds of Oceanside residents that own homes in these areas that are paying thousands of dollars extra per month for flood insurance. And all that's needed is this to complete, and we can save Oceanside residents, a lot of which are in lower income neighborhoods, thousands of dollars a year on their insurance policy. So I think that's a big one that has been lingering for a long time that I would really like to see some advocacy for on a state and federal level to really get some help on that. But outside of that, I move approval. I make a motion to move approval.
Councilmember Khan.
Well, I was lucky enough this year to go on our appropriations committee to Washington, D.C., and I think one thing that I have been I'm surprised and proud of, though, is our bipartisan cooperation with state, local, and federal officials. We had, I thought, a very productive trip for the most part. We met with, it doesn't matter the party, we sat down with Congressman Levin. I've talked to Assemblymember Borna Horvath on multiple occasions. And I think our city staff has done a wonderful job of advocating for our needs. And in D.C., we went to the Bureau of Reclamation where they praised our pure water project. I think one of the quotes that stood out to me was, your city is actually getting things done. I think a lot of people go to D.C. and talk and ask for things, but we've got the pure water project started, and I think that made a big impression. I think having 50% water independence is incredible. So we were able to advocate for our homeless situation, crime. One of the issues one of the speakers brought up was sand. I can tell you that was at the Army Corps of Engineers. It was an interesting meeting. It didn't go very well. We have the harbor, which has caused a lot of our sand depletion. And the federal government has acknowledged it. We were supposed to have a 20 years ago, our sand project, replenishment project, or a feasibility study was supposed to begin and done in 44 months, and it hasn't begun yet, and it's not funded this year. And we didn't get any indication that was going to start. So I have been advocating daily with Congress, with Assembly, to try to get some kind of movement on that, and I think we're going to keep doing that. And that was clearly stated in our coastal protection enhancement. And that goes to sea level rise, whether we've had about 6 to 8 inches according to scripts, but for the next 15 to 20 years that we can plan for, sand replenishment is our best, cheapest, most feasible way to protect our coast. And it's not only that, but it also our beach activities are very important to Oceansiders. So it's a priority. It will continue to be a priority. And in the climate action plan, we have, I think it's broad enough in here that we're going to continue to support it. I voted for it. I thought it was very important as we transition to different energy sources, and we're going to pursue a CCE eventually. These are all things we're going to do, advocate for, and I think we're going to get a lot of them done. That's going to take work, but we're going to do it. But our trip to D.C. and the amount of work that went into it from city staff and the priorities, I was very encouraged our future. So, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Feller.
Thank you. Almost everything that was brought up by the public is already being advocated for by city staff on a regular basis. As Councilmember Kime said, and literally all the things that were mentioned by public are solutions from the federal government and the state, and that's a long-term process every time with those people. As you heard 20 years ago, a 44-month study with the Army Corps. I would just add my thoughts that this is again what we are carefully under our watchful eyes, doing everything we can to actually, I would think we'd be trying to keep the big government out of our business, but we're at least watching the topics that were discussed. And I will tell you, that was one of the first things I thought of. Jimmy brought it up about sand replenishment off of the littoral cells out there. Just pumps, literally just pumps could pump sand on there till we'd have a beach that's kind of like north of the harbor. But you'll never get that by Coastal Commission, because they actually want your house, if you live along the ocean, to fall back in the ocean. So I second the motion that Councilmember Rodriguez made. this is a long work in progress. I just hope we keep moving forward on the issues that were talked about by the public that did show up today, and I know we will. Thank you.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't want to imply that staff does not do, is not working hard. They are. They really, really are. But bottom line is, it's the council that decides policy, and that is what staff does in terms of pursue funding and grants. And if we don't spell it out, I mean, there's a million things that they could be doing, and they work really hard. I know that they're there from early to late and sometimes beyond that. What I am recommending here is that, or suggesting here is that there are certain things that we're not moving forward on at all. And it's because of past council policies. So, economic development, more livable wage jobs, we still have the same poverty neighborhoods that we've had forever. And as much as we try, and I try to help change that, it's difficult. For the first time, we had no shelters in Oceanside, no shelters. And that was because of past council policies. So, and I do want to point out that there is something that references climate action in here under smart and sustainable cities. So it's there. What I'm going to do is, I hope that we can update this next year. Obviously, there's no one else that's supporting putting this off, so we can do a really thorough review and update. So I'm going to go ahead and support this because something is better than nothing. But I do really encourage us on the dais that we do a better job next year. Thank you.
And I would support having an additional bullet point in regards to specific legislation on the climate action plan. However, I will say, and I'm going to support this as well, and I would tell my colleagues, if you have notes on what's in here, or if you have suggestions, get them to the city manager so they can evaluate them and bring them back in an appropriate time. So we have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion approved by vote. So we're going to take a short break until 6 o'clock and come back with our public hearing items, and then we will hear the remaining general items after the public hearing. We're going to reconvene the City Council meeting and go to our public hearing item number 16. which is an introduction of an ordinance and adoption of a resolution for various zoning streamlining measures. And we'll start with disclosures, please.
Just staff.
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 We will go to Mr. Nightingale.
Good evening, council members, honorable mayor.
Oh, hold on, Scott. We did disclosures for item 16, the public hearing on the streamlining initiatives. There you go, Scott.
All right, thank you. Council members, honorable mayor, members of the public, I'm Scott Nightingale from the Planning Division, here to present agenda item number 16 for the downtown streamline code change. This proposal is staff and the downtown advisory recommend that the city council introduce an ordinance and adopt a resolution approving the zone amendment and the local coastal program amendment to amend Articles 4A and 12 of the downtown zoning ordinance, establishing a revised ordinance that will provide for more commercial uses in the downtown area and a streamlined review of such uses. This proposal would also provide for new commercial uses that are currently allowed outside of the downtown, which are primarily allowed in our inland and coastal areas. So it'll basically mirror a lot of our land uses that are permitted within those areas. Also allow for non-controversial commercial uses to be approved by staff or permitted by right. Also list specific regulated uses is either allowed or not allowed. Currently it doesn't establish that now. And And here is an image of the downtown zoning map. The proposed amendments would primarily affect the commercial and office areas within our downtown. Those areas are primarily on Mission Avenue, Coast Highway, and some areas stretching also within the northern boundaries as well along Coast Highway. A little background on this project. Back in August 7th, 2019, City Council directed staff to implement a streamlined review that would affect all projects within the city. Fiscal year 2019-20, Council goal number 9 was to complete a streamlined process for a variety of applications, including the downtown area. And on January 22nd, 2020, the staff took this item to the Downtown Advisory Committee, where it was recommended approval by a vote of 6-0 with some modifications to City Council. Those items are provided in the staff report. I can go further into those if needed. On February 4th, 2020, staff presented the amendments to Main Street Oceanside, and the amendments were generally well received. And on February 11th, 2020, staff took this item to the Economic Development Commission, where it was reviewed and recommended approval. So when reviewing this zone amendment and local coastal program amendment, staff determined that the downtown commercial uses were limited in order to prescribe the downtown revitalization. Back when the downtown matrix was approved, the existing use matrix and table and commercial land uses were very specifically limited with the intent to revitalize downtown within a specific and prescribed manner. So with that, staff is proposing to provide more up-to-date type uses based on the change in the market. Commercial uses should be broadened and the review streamlined. Staff has determined that allowing specific and up-to-date uses will assist in the revitalizing of the downtown and assist in establishing more commercial synergy between the existing and proposed commercial uses. Also, the regulated uses should be specifically listed as allowed with a CUP or not permitted at all, with some viewed as not being acceptable. As of right now, as I included earlier, some of the adult and also regulated uses are not specified within the land use matrix table, so we are including those in there. And lastly, staff anticipates that these amendments will foster an overall economic activity and provide for more commercial uses that are not available in today's matrix and are needed for this downtown area to thrive. So what are these amendments? Here's a list of about 27 items that we revised within the land use matrix table.
The first one being daycare general. We changed that from an administrative use permit requirement to just permitted by right. Single family dwellings removed from some of the sub-districts. Animal facilities, these are animal hospitals, animal retail sales, just selling of animal products. We've added to some of the sub-districts. ATMs permitted by right in some of the sub-districts. Bars and cocktail lounges, also added within some of the districts with a regulated conditional use permit, which will be required approval of the City Council. Commercial recreation, we added